Notebooking has increased in popularity over the last few years among homeschoolers, and you can find a lot of ideas by Googling it. I'd like to offer some suggestions for using it in a heart-based education, but these are only suggestions. Let your children create something that's meaningful to them. Notebooking provides a way to keep a record of the most important things your children are learning. If you're homeschooling, many districts require evidence of schoolwork, and the ideas I'll be sharing should help satisfy that requirement. But more importantly, the purpose is to organize and to hold on to ideas. These notebooks will become a lifetime treasure. While tests often reveal everything the child doesn't know, notebooks provide a way to demonstrate and share the many things he does know. I've already talked about starting a notebook for memory gems in the poetry section, which becomes the first notebooking experience and should satisfy part of the literature requirement. And I talked about nature journals in the Nature Talk. The purpose of the next notebook is a reading log to keep track of all the books your child will be reading. Use a 3-ring binder and add 14 dividers, one for each month if you're doing the rotation schedule I've been recommending, plus one for nature reading and one for books that don't fall under any of the other categories. I've included some reading logs you can print out in the Story Club monthly resources. I'd keep American history books on a separate log from world history books. It's not always easy for your child to remember what books he's read, especially if he's been doing a lot of reading, so this will give him a quick way to see if he's already read a certain book when he comes back through the rotation each year. Also, by assigning a number to each one, it will be easy to trace back the references that will be made in the history notebooks I'm about to describe without having to write out the entire title and author. For instance, you could identify a book as F1-5-16, signifying it's on the first month of the Freedom Series log, and the second number enables you to quickly find where the book is numerically on the list. In this case, it would be the 5th book, and the last number gives you the page number within that book. You can create different log sheets under the Nature tab if you want to sort them by stars, rocks, insects, animals, and so forth. As the number of books your child reads starts adding up, it's going to give him a tremendous sense of accomplishment and satisfaction and will feed his desire to add more to his list. The Reading Log Notebook is a good place to place the story resource guide that I described in the last talk. The next notebook I've called Literature Gems. If you follow the story guide, you'll get to spend a lot of time reading classic literature, and classic literature is full of gems that make you stop and think. They're the quotable quotes. When a passage strikes your children, have them bookmark it with a post-it flag so that they can go back later and then record it in their notebook. Because it takes time and effort to write out a passage, they'll soon start self-selecting and look for the diamonds, the things that really strike them. They don't need to put everything in their gem book. My personal opinion is that making kids write book reports for all the books they read does more to kill a love of reading than just about anything else. This gives you a simple alternate activity. What you do want to do is to give them little trigger reminders, which is the idea behind this notebook. Have them create a new page for each classic book and arrange them in their notebook in an alphabetical order by author so they can easily find the book that they're looking for. You want to encourage your children to make these notebooks not just practical but beautiful to look at. Find ways to add color and illustrations. We're in the process of pulling out the wonderful illustrations in the classic children's books and reducing them down to a 1/4 page size so that children can use them to illustrate their Literature Gems notebooks. You'll be able to find them in the image library on the resource page. These pictures will serve as an instant reminder of the stories that they've read. If there are no pictures available, have them draw their own pictures, or just encourage them to add some kind of color design border or to add color and interest. That's another activity that can be done to occupy hands while you're reading to them. If a quote is too long or they just want to remember where to go back and find a certain passage, have them write enough to trigger the thought and record the page number so they can go back and find it in the actual book. This little activity helps them connect to their own thoughts as opposed to having someone else tell them what to think about while they're reading. It's a good habit to develop. The act of handwriting these gems and ideas will serve to further impress great ideas on their hearts, and it gives them a chance to practice handwriting in a meaningful way. Going back and looking through it is sure to be an enjoyable activity not just in childhood but throughout life. Many classics are reread, and new thoughts and quotes can be added to the page. Picture it as a scrapbook of ideas gleaned from great literature. The history notebooks will grow to be probably the largest project. I look at them as being a giant scrapbook of the lessons learned from the great men and women of history. I suggest starting with 3 large 3-ring binders with the insertable plastic covers. The best price I've found for binders is at Costco if you have a membership there. The first binder will be titled Ancient History and will cover the years 4000 BC to 100 AD, which is just after the fall of Jerusalem. Let your kids personalize the cover. One suggestion is to choose from some of the fine art from the Art Renewal Center. Place 25 dividers inside. Label the first 4 by 500-year increments, 4000 to 3500 BC, 3500 to 3000 BC, and so forth, down to about 2000 BC, which is the time of Abraham. Then label the rest by 100-year increments. The second book will be the Middle Ages, from 100 AD to 1600 AD, which is about the time that America started getting colonized. And this book will have 16 divider tabs in 100-year increments. The last notebook will be the Modern Ages from 1600 to the present day, and will have 8 divider tabs breaking the years down into 50-year increments. You may want to adjust it in a way that works best for you. You'll obviously have the most pages in modern days and fewer in the ancient days, which is why there are wider age spans covered per section. Also, it's harder to pin down an exact year when you're looking at ancient times. These notebooks are going to be used to start weaving together the stories of the great people and events of history. Because students are reading the stories of nations separately, they need to connect what's happening in England at the same time as in France or in Arabia. As pages are placed in a chronological order, children will start to make connections of what is happening at the same time in all parts of the world. As your children start reading those stories of history, let them create a page for their notebook for each person of their choice that has something they want to remember. Most of the pages in these notebooks will be pages of individual people. It's not necessary to create a page for every single person they bump into, but when someone teaches them something or has a story they want to remember, have them create a page. Write the name of the person across the top of the page and then place their year of birth in the upper right-hand corner with the year of their death directly underneath it. Place the page in the notebook according to the year of their births in the appropriate section. Teach them how to use the internet to look up dates and facts quickly, and then have them note just underneath what country or countries that person is associated with. For instance, Columbus was born in Italy, but most of his story takes place in Spain. The difference between this notebook and maybe others is that there won't be as much emphasis on facts. Let the child put in whatever facts are important to them, but most of what will be included are ideas. Have your children illustrate the page. They can either draw their own picture or use pictures from a variety of resources. We're going through the history books in the online library and also reducing those story pictures from these old books to quarter-page size for your use in these notebooks. And just like the pictures from classic literature, you'll be able to find these images in the Images library. What I like about the pictures from the old children's books is that they tell part of the story as opposed to just giving the children a headshot of the person. For instance, including a picture of Columbus being ridiculed as he walks by a group of children will be more meaningful than just a picture of his face. Your children can also find illustrations in old history textbooks or travel books. If you shop the library used book sales, you can often pick these up for $1 or $1, and when they're that cheap, I don't mind having them cut up at all. Cutting out pictures and putting them in an accordion filing folder for later use and organizing them by month in the rotation schedule can be another hand-occupying activity while you're reading. You can also use the fine art images from the Art Renewal Center that I've organized by country. Print them out in whatever size fits into the child's plan for his page. Stay away from the idea of needing to complete each page. Because learning is going to be layered in over years, each page will be a constant work in progress. Let your children write front and back. Be sure and put reinforcements on the whole so the pages won't tear out, by the way. Now, I'm sure you're wondering what should be written on the pages. Because we're trying to appeal to the heart, we're looking for ideas and life lessons rather than facts and information. Facts are easy to pull up on the internet. What you want to include are those ideas and stories that strike your children while they're reading and that they want to remember. What lesson is more important to a child? The fact that Columbus is the son of a woolcomber, or that he persisted with an idea even when he was ridiculed? This may take some time to develop, and the best way to teach it is, again, by doing it yourself in your own notebook and letting them observe. These are some quotes from my book. Here's from Sir Edward Gibbon on ancient Greece. In the end, more than they wanted freedom, they wanted security. They wanted a comfortable life, and they lost it all, security, comfort, and freedom. When the freedom they wished for was freedom from responsibility, then Athens ceased to be free. Or from Clara Barton, what is money to me if I have no country? Or Dr. Lyman Beecher, the wear and tear of what I cannot do is a great deal more than the wear and tear of what I do. Or the very greatest things, great thoughts, discoveries, inventions, have usually been nurtured in hardship, often pondered over in sorrow, and at length established in difficulty. By the time a child starts a study of history, he'll likely be 8 years old or older and will have some handwriting skills. So initially the entries will likely be copywork of quotes. Some children are storytellers and may want to dictate the story to you briefly. Others might want to just jot down the basics of the story so they can remember it. For the first couple of years, he might only want to paste in pictures of the stories and get the pages set up. That's okay. It represents what is important to your child, whatever level he's at. He might also want to jot down questions that arise from his reading. As children add pages and go back to add new information to old pages, they'll automatically review things they've learned and start linking everything together. These pages can be the start of research. Always have them record where they found the quote or story using the abbreviated method I described earlier, which refers them back to their reading log. When they run into the same person again in another book, have them jot down where they found them in the new book. Maybe you'll want to dedicate a portion of the page for a running log of reading references. At some point, they may want to read all the references at one time to pull together a larger picture of that person and then use it to write a research paper. Look at these history notebooks, again, as scrapbooks of wisdom for happy living and prosperous civilizations. Remember, those are the rules they're looking for. And sometimes those rules are discovered by looking at lives of people who broke them. I mentioned creating a page for each notable person, but a separate page can also be created for significant events, such as wars or signing of significant documents like the Magna Carta or the Declaration of Independence. Arrange them by beginning date if they took place over a long period of time, and make note of the country or countries they took place in. And now there's one more notebook to create, an Around the World notebook. This is a cultural notebook. Add divider tabs, one for each nation that is studied. Arrange them alphabetically. This is where maps can be placed and referenced, notes about religious beliefs, landmarks and monuments, clothes, interesting traditions and holidays, and so forth. Again, use old geography books or textbooks or travel books or old National Geographics that you pick up at used book sales for the pictures. If they make crafts that reflect a nation's culture, take a picture of it and paste it in the book. Throw in some recipes and songs. Include maps from olden times as well as modern. I'll include what I can find in the image library. That way they can start to attach new names with old places, such as modern-day Iraq was ancient Babylon, and modern-day Iran was ancient Persia. While the history notebook will highlight our human nature similarities, this cultural notebook will help children celebrate and understand our differences. Hopefully one day they'll get to see the world, and when they do, they'll travel with eyes open much wider than the ordinary tourist. In the end, It's not how many things our children know about that matters. It's how many things they care about. That's what they'll remember. And that's why these notebooks of learning will become lifelong treasures, because these represent what your children care about.